Adding pressure again. And as he throws again. Lobbed up. Stops. Launches deep. Jalen Gordon. Touchdown, Chargers. Williams to the end zone. Touchdown, Chargers. Deion Henley returns the ball. Deion Henley. First interception in his career. Succumbs. Score. Knock it out. A touchdown. Jack Sawyer. Head down the sidelines.
If you want to talk ball, I will answer the call. Hello, football fans, and welcome in. It's another edition of Answer the Call. I am your host, Tim, and I am going to be joined today by a special guest. But thank you guys all for the love and interactions you're showing on the social medias, guys. You are nailing it with these videos. You know, that one video, of course, hit over 15,000 on YouTube and 22,000 across social medias, you know, and I mean, we're getting subs, we're getting followers. So make sure you're following on all social media platforms: Spotify, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. So we have a special episode today. You know, the NFL Combine is right around the corner, Thursday to be exact. And what better way to get ready for the Combine than to have a pre-draft Combine mock draft? And I am joined by a special guest, Ben Rodriguez, NFL Playmakers on Instagram, also a co-host of Inside the Locker Room. So welcome in, Mr. Ben. How are we doing today, buddy?
Going good. Some of the snow is finally starting to, calm down a little bit, but we still in a blizzard over here on the East Coast. It's way too cold. I'm ready for spring.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, here in the South, the Midwest, the South Midwest, whatever you want to call it, it is a nice day. It says it's 61 outside, so I'm really happy that yeah. I saw the blizzard like up there. I saw it on, I think, Facebook or Instagram yesterday, and it was like showing like the totals, and like some parts it was like 21 inches of snow. I was like, holy cow! I thought we were done. I thought we were done with winter, but I guess you guys aren't.
Yeah, I guess the groundhog, he never lies. He never lies.
You know, that is really interesting though, because from what I understand, the groundhog is based in Philadelphia. And, I'm just like, how can that be an accurate representation of the whole nation when you have, places like Cali and places like Florida who are constantly warm all year round. And then you have like the Midwest who the weather here, it's like bipolar, like we could have all 4 seasons in one day here. So it's just really interesting. I don't understand the groundhog. And I also don't understand, like, if he sees his shadow, that means the sun is out. That should mean warmer weather. I don't know. But I don't understand the groundhog, guys. So, but it's a good thing that I'm not analyzing Groundhog Day because and we're doing a football podcast here. So,
yeah, I don't think a groundhog can make as good of a mock draft as we could.
I don't think so either. Before we get started with that, we're gonna talk mock drafts today, pre-combine mock drafts, but there's some news, so the Coll report is kind of going to be the first call of the day. And there's, news around the league. And I got to tell you, there's some of this stuff is kind of interesting. I'll get started real quick with the NCAA. I guess the committee could propose to remove carryover suspension for targeting calls for first-time offenders. I mean, for a first-time offender, I don't have a problem with that. But like if the person is constantly getting targeting calls, and yeah, they need to up their penalty. So I don't really have a problem with that. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, as long as it causes like less injuries, and I guess people are not leading with their head as much. I'm all for that.
For sure. So Bucks feel that Mike Evans deserves to hit the open market over getting franchise tagged. And I gotta say, like, hearing this, it's just crazy, because Mike Evans is that player. He's taking contract less money to stay with the team, and now the team's like, well, hey, you deserve to go hit this open market, and it's looking like Mike Evans might be a free agent for the first time in his life. So, what team do you think could go get him?
Man, I mean, the one thing on Mike Evans' mind that has to be rolling around there is a chance at a Super Bowl ring. So I'm sure he's gonna want to go to a contending team. I mean, obviously the Patriots were not that close last year, and they could use some wide receiver help. But that's just like the first team that comes to mind. But yeah, as you said, Mike Evans hitting the free agency market in the first time in his career is just kind of crazy. We saw him like infuriated after the Falcons game after they blew that lead, and that was the
Mhm.
Kyle Pitts hat trick game. So that sucked to see Mike Evans come back from injury even early than he was probably supposed to, and then still the Bucks could have just get it done last year. So it's going to be interesting to see if he stays with Tampa. But I feel like a lot of people in that Tampa area are just growing and growing in frustration with possibly the coaching staff. I know last year their team was like super penalized last year in like almost every game. So yeah, I think the big contender that's going to be looking for a wide receiver this free agency is going to be New England.
I see New England. Don't rule out Kansas City. I know he's a
Mhm.
little bit older, but and they'll have to kind of wiggle some more cap space. I know Patrick Mahomes just took a pay cut to kind of help him with that, but they are still in the red. But I see the Patriots. I can see the Chiefs. You know, maybe a team like the Broncos who don't really have a true alpha male. I mean, that would help Bo Nix out a lot. It's just going to be so weird not seeing him in a Bucks jersey though if he doesn't return to Tampa. So Mike Evans is a great wide receiver. I'm sure he'll definitely be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
want to talk. I want to talk about your team for a moment, and
Oh boy.
what's going on with Brees Hall? It's looking like he's either going to get tagged or they're going to try to get a long term deal done. Is from what I'm hearing. Are you excited about it? Would you rather them just go ahead and move on and get maybe a younger back in the draft? I mean, Brees Hall is. I mean, he's kind of earned whatever, like, I mean, Brees Hall is Brees Hall. And
Mhm.
I I don't know. I mean, but it is looking like he is going to return back to the Jets. So, I mean, are you hearing anything different?
Not necessarily that I'm hearing anything different, but I mean, I've been waiting a little while to share my opinion on Brees Hall, to be quite honest with you, because I might be in like the kind of outlier class here. But in my opinion, I mean, the Jets have shown us before that they're not good at, retaining players. So maybe they try to take a different approach and maybe keep Brees Hall. But I mean, the running back position is just getting, expanded and expanded each and every year. And, for the New York Jets, it's just a matter of do they want to keep Brees and just pay him that money? They have more than enough money to do so. But I mean, I agree with you with Brees proving enough in terms of the quality of a running back he is. But in my opinion, the last two seasons, perhaps for Brees Hall, haven't been necessarily the greatest. What I've
Mhm.
seen from Brees Hall these past two seasons is honestly more complaining than production. So that's something I don't really want
Ah.
on the Jets football team, to be quite honest with you. And a lot of people have seen the endless tweets and the complaining from Brees Hall online. And granted, in his shoes, you want to be paid what you deserve and all that, but it's just going to be a matter of fact if the Jets see it the same exact way. And to be quite honest, they've showed us that they've not, seen retaining players like this outside of, Garrett Wilson. And
Right.
before they traded Sauce Gardner, they gave him that humongous contract. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that if they do, they probably will franchise tag him. That is, honestly a guarantee at this point, because if you franchise tag him and then you trade him, you're going to get the most value out of him as possible.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
if they didn't franchise tag him, they'd lose him for absolutely nothing, basically, because, he would go sign with another team. So that's going to be certainly
Oh,
an interesting, situation to keep an eye on. They said as early as March 3rd is their kind of, deadline to see if they could get something done. but I don't know.
That's like
The
next week.
team, yeah. Yeah, the team, they got Braylon Allen coming back from injury. I'm a huge fan of him. I mean, he's more of that
Mhm.
third down back, get you that 5 extra yards every time, has people bouncing off of him all the time, but I don't know. There's just also gonna be other running backs in free agency. Do they bring in somebody else? So we'll see what happens with that.
As long as he doesn't go to the Chiefs, I'll be okay.
I feel like that's probably his number one destination, to be quite honest with
I
you.
I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, the Chiefs are always in the best position. They got the greatest coach in football right now,
Mhm.
and they have arguably the greatest quarterback in football right now. And um, it's just a great atmosphere. I actually used to live just like 2 hours south of Kansas City, and I've been to their stadium as a visitor. And let me tell you, that atmosphere in there is unreal. You wouldn't believe it. So I I just, as long as it's not Kansas City, as a Chargers fan, as an NFL fan, I don't care. Like I just, that's like I talked on a previous episode that as an NFL fan, I want the Raiders to do good, but as a Chargers fan, I never want the Raiders to do good. But the NFL fan side of me just wants competition. Um, but speaking of competition or the lack of, this the Cleveland Browns. I feel like a broken record at this point because here we are. It is February, right before the draft, and the Cleveland Browns are in the market for a quarterback. They're in talk with draft prospects. They're looking at potential trades. I just seen a little bit ago that they are open to trade the number 6 pick in the draft. And I feel like a broken record at this point because like year in, year out, they want to acquire a quarterback. They want to draft a quarterback. They draft 5 quarterbacks. None of them pan out. I'm kidding. They did draft 2 last year, and now they might be moving on from both of them. And now we don't know about Deshaun Watson. And so it's just like a broken record, the same story with the Browns. And like, why can they not get this figured out, Ben? I mean, seriously, I get it. The quarterback talent. There are only a few elite quarterbacks, but you can't find a good quarterback. You can't find one that can win you enough games to get you to a playoff every now and then. I mean, I don't know, man. This is like same old story with the same old Browns.
Yeah, and like I'll throw another name out there. I mean, remember Deshaun Kaiser? That was
Oh,
terrible. That was terrible. I mean, Deshaun Kaiser, that's a pull right there. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the Browns have just not had success at the quarterback position overall. But I feel like people can't forget. I mean, in what little time, how much Shador Sanders did, because he did beat an Aaron Rodgers in his rookie year. I think like that's something to note. And honestly, this Browns defense is just always, filled with studs. They drafted, the defensive rookie of the year last year in Carson Swessinger. So I feel
mhm.
like they need to start building around pieces more, whether that be on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball. We saw a lot of drop passes last year from wide receivers, on throws that weren't necessarily the worst of throws. And it did make Shador, look worse. But I think going into this next season for the Cleveland Browns, I feel like they need to build around Shador, like I just said. I mean, the number
Yeah.
6 pick in the draft, there's a lot of options they can go there. But specifically for me on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to be able to draft either, a top offensive lineman or, one of the top receivers, if not the top receiver on their board. So I feel like there's potential for this, offense. We already know the defense is filled with, greats like Miles Garrett, who broke the sack record last year. But I don't know. I just feel like that the Browns, they need to stick with what they got and just see where it goes from there. Give Shador a full season, see what that looks like, and just go from there. And now the Deshaun Watson situation is interesting too, because we all know how bad his contract is. So of course they're still going to try and I guess pencil him in somewhere. But
Right.
the starting job is supposedly up in the air. But for me, Shador did more than enough to give him another shot this year.
That's what I thought too. He came in, he didn't have a true number one wide receiver, didn't have didn't have very good team period, and he still made the best of it.
And
Also,
the
the
offensive
Browns
line play
from
was terrible.
speaking of that, I mean, come on, like I saw that like their whole offensive line could be like free agents. Like what is
Yeah,
going on? But I don't know. Cleveland fans, let us know your thoughts on this because we're sitting here scratching our heads because we can't believe that here we are again, another draft, and we're talking that they're in the market. Cowboys are making some moves, guys. They're trying to keep their offense together. They're trying to keep those offensive pieces around Dak Prescott together. They signed Javonte Williams to a 3-year extension. They franchise tagged, or they're expected to franchise tag George Pickens in the upcoming weeks. This kind of seems like they're trying to keep the veteran offense together, and they're going to go draft some defensive playmakers in the draft. And I don't know. I mean, it could be the same old Cowboys. Maybe they make a move in the NFC East. I mean, that East is not getting any easier with the hiring of John Harbaugh to the Giants. Uh, it is Javonte Williams, and I mean George Pickens for sure. I get the George Pickens. Like you want him and CD Lamb together. But I did Javonte Williams do enough to really warrant the extension? I mean, he did have a great season.
Yeah, I think he had more than a, average year for the Cowboys. I mean, it wasn't anything that like starstruck me, but I mean, I've always liked Javonte Williams as a back in his time in Denver. Obviously, it was good. But yeah, as you said, they want to keep this offense together because they were one of the hottest offenses last season. But of course, on the defensive side of the ball, they were one of the worst units in football. So that's why I got them double dipping on defense in the first round of the draft. But yeah, I mean,
Oh,
George Pickens
spoiler
last year,
alert.
he was a top 5 receiver, arguably. So I mean, honestly, every blame that you could have had for the Cowboys last season could have went to their defense because I don't know, Dak was putting up in the offense, they were putting up like almost 30, 40 points almost every other game. So
Mhm.
I was pretty impressed from what I saw from their offense last year.
Well, the Matty D, he's a lifetime listener of the show, friend. Um, let me know your thoughts. I know you're going to be listening to the episode, so I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Cowboy fans, is this the right move, or should they have went a different route? George Pickens the only issue I have with that is CD Lamb is kind of a diva, and he tends to kind of be, oh, I'm not getting the ball enough. Well, hey, guess what? If your team's winning, it doesn't matter how much you're getting the ball, buddy. So, real quick, we're gonna wrap it up with unless you have other news. I've got just two more real quick. It's a same team situation again. Falcons plan to franchise tag Kyle Pitts. That was announced last night. Earlier today, right before the show, Kirk Cousins is getting cut from the Falcons. That's going to be a move that cost them a lot of money. I feel like, but I want to know. I think there's a lot of teams out there that could use him. I mean, Vikings for obvious reasons. Dolphins, they might be trading Tua. That's another team that kind of comes to mind.
Mhm.
Your Jets could use a veteran quarterback.
Very
So
much so.
who gets Kirk Cousins?
Honestly, I feel like Kirk Cousins to New York has been long overdue. They just didn't want to pay him that much money before. But I mean, if you get him for cheaper on a cheaper veteran deal, I wouldn't mind the move at all for the New York Jets. Because what other options do you have out there? I mean, there's reports today coming out that they're interested in trading for Tanner McKee and
Mhm.
to keep an eye on Malik Willis, but I feel like, Malik Willis is another quarterback who could end up a Jet or a Dolphin along those lines. But, the Vikings, they obviously kind of wish they still had Kirk because, imagine if they just kept them And I feel like at this point, they don't want to admit that they're wrong about JJ McCarthy. And, there's a camp that, still believes in him. And, this last season taught us everything we needed to know about, quarterback development in the NFL. We saw Sam Darnold get a ring. So it's going to be interesting to see, where certain quarterbacks go. And the thing I always like to tell people about quarterbacks too is that it really just the situation means everything, in my opinion, for a quarterback. Because, you throw him
Mhm.
in, he's got no help out there. That's just feeding him to the wolves. But I mean, if you have a system in place already that they're familiar with, even a city that they're already familiar with, like, if Kirk would go back to Minnesota, stuff like that just makes a lot of sense for a lot of these quarterback pairings that we might see in free agency. Why we are kind of making these predictions. Like, for example, if Aaron Rodgers wants to come back next year, he's going to go right back to Pittsburgh because Mike McCarthy is there. So it's just certain
Right.
situations that these quarterbacks want to be in and that they're comfortable with, especially, for the veterans like uh Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. They're gonna want to feel comfortable. And we even saw it last year with Joe Flacco getting traded in the middle of the season. He went to Cleveland. And he obviously knows that division like the back of his hand because he played them twice a year for nearly a decade. So that's another example of a quarterback, going to a comfortable situation in free agency. Or actually, sorry, that was a trade, but you get my point.
Joe Flacco, he just needs to go play for the Steelers, and then he'll have the whole AFC North sweep. Never been done before. Kirk Cousins, though, for me, man, New York does. I mean, because you got Garrett Wilson, you bring back Brees Hall, you got a strong defense, and I can only imagine that via the draft, they're gonna only get stronger on that defensive side. So for me, I think it's kind of a no brainer. You go get that veteran quarterback, then you might draft a quarterback in like round two or three to kind of sit behind Cousins, learn the game. There's no pressure. You're not wasting a first round pick on a quarterback that may or may not start. You don't have to feel rushed to start him in because I feel that is what happens too much in the NFL now is, you have all these quarterbacks and you take them in the first round and then all of a sudden you maybe from the owners, maybe from the fans, maybe a combination. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, we just spent a first round pick on this guy. I want to be seeing him on the field. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes they need that extra development, and just sit behind a veteran. Look at Aaron Rodgers. He sat for 3 years behind Brett Favre. And look what he is today. Jordan Love, I mean, Jordan Love's not elite, but kind of the same process. He sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 or 3 seasons and then he became the starter. So I personally like that approach a little bit more. I mean, look at Patrick Mahomes. He was the number 10 or 15th pick in the draft, and he sat behind Alex Smith until it was kind of deemed that the Chiefs weren't going to make the playoffs. And so then they're like, all right, well, let's go see what you can do. And, so bring in Cousins, draft a rookie in maybe round 2. So I don't know. You like that? You like that? So
I mean, that would certainly be, outside of the norm for New York Jets because all they do is draft quarterbacks and throw them to the wolves. So I wouldn't mind, even if they take Ty Simpson in the second round, I wouldn't be, jumping for joy, but I would be, a little less stressed about that if we did bring in a Kirk Cousins or a veteran presence because you don't have to start them immediately. And that's, like I said, that's what the Jets have always done, throw quarterbacks to the wolves. So now, if they use a first round pick on a quarterback like Ty Simpson at like 16, then I'm going to be scratching my head a little bit because, in my opinion, he's not a first round quarterback. But I mean, we'll see what happens with some of these free agent quarterbacks like Kirk. And, there's rumors of Aaron Rodgers potentially wanting to come back next year. So it's going to be interesting to see what these quarterback needy teams do in the
right.
upcoming weeks.
Yeah, a lot of teams might need a quarterback. There's not a lot of great talent in the draft. I mean, besides Mendoza, there shouldn't be a first round quarterback, but I mean, it's a whole different discussion. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, guys, this is going to be the last call. It is time to get on the clock with the call. mock draft pre-combine edition. And let's just be real, guys. Everyone in the nation knows Fernando Mendoza is going number 1 to the Raiders. I mean, it's like the worst kept secret, you can think of. The Raiders are taking him. Clint Kubiak loves him already. He's already been kind of learning Kubiak's system. Spice Hack loves him. Tom Brady is a big fan of him. So he's going to be the first player taken. So we're not even going to start at number 1. He will be the first player off the board. So technically the draft doesn't start until the Jets are on the clock with the next pick. And Mr. Ben here is a Jets fan. So it is only fitting that we give him the floor and let him talk about his number 2 pick in the draft as soon as I can get it pulled back up here. All right. As you to those that are watching, you can see it on the board here. Those that are listening, you can go to YouTube, Facebook, Kick, and you can see the lovely graphic that this is actually his post from yesterday, if I remember correctly. And you can see his little mock draft that he did via PFF. And, well, all right. So you have the floor, and you're going to talk about this lovely, lovely pick here.
So, for weeks, people have been mocking Arvell Reese to the New York Jets. And now I wouldn't mind that completely. I just feel like he just doesn't have enough reps at the, edge rusher position. And as far as linebackers go for this Jets team, we still have Caden McDonald. We still have, Jermaine Johnson. So those 2 pieces, they're not guaranteed, or Jermaine Johnson is not guaranteed to, come back or, be the same player that he is. But I feel like the Jets, they need to look at their biggest flaw from last season. And it's so obvious because they set a NFL historic record, 0 interceptions. And that's hard to do. I mean, a single player could have more interceptions than your entire team. So when looking at the board, I mean, they could really go anywhere. I feel like a receiver obviously would be too high at 2. The Brees Hall situation is going to be interesting because what if he's not on the team next year? Do they look at a Jeremiah Love? That would sort of blow everybody's boards up. That would be honestly something that not a lot of people are talking about. I brought it up before, but it's going to be, heating up as time goes on if Brees is, ending up not going back. But with the second overall pick in the NFL draft, I had the Jets taking arguably the safest prospect in the entire draft and Caleb Downs out of Ohio State. And drafting a player like Caleb Downs does multiple things for your team. And it's a lot of things that he could do that the Jets absolutely need. And I'll start with this one first. He's going to bring a culture shift, on that defensive side of the ball, and what better position to do it with than, a DB. Aaron Glenn is back to calling defensive plays, for the defense. So maybe he wants to bring in a fresh set of legs, this young superstar and Caleb Downs. Obviously won the national championship last year with the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I would be,
Well, that was the year
filled with
before.
joy. Year before. Got you. Yeah, I would be. Yeah, Indiana, of course, last year. Yeah, but I would be thrilled if the Jets went ahead and picked Caleb Downs. And, some people might argue and say, hey, pick number 2 is too high for a safety. But to me, people are comparing him to, a Troy Polamalu potentially.
Wow.
So that right there, I mean, that I would use a second overall pick on that. So I got Caleb Downs going to the Jets at number 2.
That would actually make history. I don't think that would be the highest a safety has ever been drafted in the NFL. So
and the last team to do it were the New York Jets when they drafted Jamal Adams
at 5, right?
I believe it was at like 6 or something like that. Yeah,
5 or 6. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I'm going a different route. I am actually going with Arvell Reeves. Linebacker is not a glaring need for the Jets, as Mr. Ben just said. But how can you pass on the talent of Arvell Reeves? And I think he would be a great addition to Aaron Glenn's defense, and he could be an anchor for that defense for many, many years. And I think, even if you don't use him as like a true linebacker, you could probably move him, to an edge role. And I think he's that kind of player that will have success either way. And I really like Arvell Reeves. Now, guys, also I want to point out something. I kind of did this mock draft just kind of based off of team needs. Now, like I said, I know linebacker's not a glaring need for the Jets. So this is just my first mock draft. Ben here, he's been killing it. I think this is his 5th or 6th mock draft already. So, we're gonna I'm gonna definitely have a different list next week, and the upcoming weeks leading into the draft. I just kind of wanted to get a feel for some of these prospects and kind of just, okay, this is a team need, and this is the player I think could go there. So mine and his list are probably going to be very different because he's already kind of dialed his in, and this is my first mock draft of the 2026 season. So I went with Arvell Reese, and I think like I said, I think he can just be that anchor and just that playmaker on defense, kind of like that quarterback of the defense that the Jets may or may not need. But that talent alone is enough for me to have the Jets take him at number 2.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly a possibility there. I think defense at number 2 is almost a lock at this point for New York. But I mean, at number 3, things get a little interesting with the Arizona Cardinals, of course. Do they go running back? Do they go offensive lineman? Even edge could surprise a lot of people for the Arizona Cardinals. But who did you have them taking at number 3?
Yeah, so Cardinals, their team needs is quarterback. They're not sold on Kyler Murray. Might trade him away. Offensive line, edge, safety, and defensive line. So I took Mr. Francis Maui-Noah, tackle from Miami. Some people have him, that's a little too high. For me, Arizona, regardless who the quarterback is, whether it's Kyler Murray, whether it's somebody else, maybe it's Kirk Cousins, who knows? But the point is offensive line was kind of one of their biggest weaknesses this past season. And if I'm being real, I think you just go out, get one of the best tackles in the draft, and whatever side you put him on, you just say, hey, I don't have to worry about that side no more. And I think Francis Maui-Noah has proven time and time again that, he can be that anchor on the offensive line. And he played against some great talent. And, I thought he had a really good season this past year in college at Miami. And I just think that he can be, that just boom. And I don't know for sure, but maybe you could slide him into guard if you really needed him to. I don't know. I think he's kind of more that traditional tackle. But for me, it's got to be a no-brainer. You got to get some offensive line. I mean, they could easily went edge, safety, because I didn't have them. I didn't have the Jets taking Caleb Downs like you did. So, I mean, he would have been there. Great defensive linemen there. There are so many options that the Cardinals could go at 3. And one player I don't think they take is Jeremiah Love. I mean, if they take Jeremiah Love, I'd be shocked.
Yeah, that'd be something. That'd be the highest running back taken since Saquon.
So who did you have?
I agree. I think Maui-Noah is, a plug and play fit for the offensive line. It would be great if the Titans would be able to select him because they get to reunite him with Cam Ward as they played together in Miami. But I feel like he might be off the board at that point before they get to do so. But yeah, as you said, Maui-Noah, he's a super young prospect and he has a lot of time ahead of him. And, he's arguably the most polished lineman prospect in this class. So Maui-Noah for me is a top 5 lock at this point, and he should be taken with the first 5 picks.
Oh, okay. So there it is. First tackle, first offensive lineman. Some people are calling this offensive line class a little weak, but I think if you really kind of break it down, it's actually not as weak as some might have suggested. Now, once you get out of like the top 5, top 10 offensive linemen in this class. Sure, it does get a little, but I think there's quite a bit of talent on the offensive line side in this draft. And I think there's going to be some surprises that sneak into the first round that maybe they're not because people are feeling the pressure to go and get a stud left tackle or right tackle. All right. So with the fourth pick, who do you have on your board?
So with Arvell Reese not going to the Jets at number 2, I have him going at number 4 to the Tennessee Titans.
Ooh.
And I could switch Arvell Reese with David Bailey even for me. It's going to be
Sure.
pretty interesting to see what the Titans do on defense, considering they just hired Robert Saleh, obviously a defensive minded head coach. So, but on the flip side, it's also interesting because Cam Ward was running for his absolute life last year in the backfield. There were really no blocking to help him out. So it's going to be interesting how they see, what best players fit for their team at number 4.
Mhm.
But for me, I think it's just more likely they go with edge with this strong edge class, considering that Maui Noah is off the board. And I think Spencer Fano would be a little bit too high at number 4. I still have him going pretty high soon, not to play spoiler. But yeah, David Bailey or Arvell Reese for the Tennessee Titans would do a lot for their team on the defensive side of the ball. Take away pressure from Simmons, one of the best defensive tackles in football. Your defense just gets better and better. I feel like a lot of people usually sleep on Tennessee's defense. They had one of the best goal line defenses, I believe, last
Mhm.
year. So that's going to
Yes.
be something to see if it continues this year. So yeah, Tennessee got to build around Cam Ward, and who knows, maybe they surprise us, next year, kind of like how the Patriots did. But I don't see them, making it super duper far. But we could see them make some noise next year, possibly.
I am in agreement with you on one thing here. I think the Titans go edge rusher. I think, that it's just too much talent at the edge rusher to pass up. And with Robert Saleh becoming the new head coach of the Titans, he's gonna want to, he's gonna want to build a strong defense. And but I'm going a different route. I'm going with a different player. I'm going edge rusher, um, David Bailey from Texas Tech. The Texas Tech standout, big, strong, powerful edge rusher. He's kind of like a prototype edge rusher in the sense that he's tall, he's got long arms. He can I've seen him literally just kind of push a lineman back with one hand as he's getting blocked to wrap up the runner. So I like the Titans to take an edge rusher here. I think it really just kind of solidifies that defensive line, makes them even stronger on those goal line that you were talking about. And kind of, because they don't have the elite corners, so it kind of takes pressure off of them, right? Because so the way that the NFL works is if you have an elite corner, like if you have let's say your team has a great corner and an elite corner, and then you have a pretty good safety over the top. Well, you don't have to be an elite pass rusher to get to the quarterback because you're literally hogging, you're staying on the wide receivers and blanketing him, and he's not able to get away. Now, on the flip side, if you have elite pass rushing, you don't have to have elite corners because they're getting to the quarterback fast, and he's going to have to throw the ball super quick, and it can make a good corner look great. So I think David Bailey is a perfect fit here with Robert Saleh's new defensive scheme that he's trying to implement in Tennessee. I imagine he's going to do similar to what he did in New York, similar to what he did in San Francisco. Of course, in New York, he had Woody Johnson all up in the mix, and we all know that. And so I just think here in Tennessee, he's going to kind of have a little bit more freedom, and he's going to kind of get to do what he wants to do. And I'm a big fan of David Bailey at number 4 to the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of David Bailey as well. He's kind of like the purest edge rusher, if you want to call it, in this draft class. I mean, he plays without gloves, whether you call that swag or not. That's swaggy to me. But 14 sacks, 14 and a half sacks actually
Yeah.
last year. And he actually played at 2 programs, Stanford and Texas Tech. So he's done it at multiple schools. And yeah, just whatever team gets him is just getting a brute force on the defensive line of the ball.
And if I remember correctly, it looks like, yep, number 5, we are in agreement on this one. I have Carnell Tate going to the Giants. I think you pair Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors and Carnell Tate, and then Cam Scatterboo comes back. Matt Nagy's the offensive coordinator. I'm not really 100% sold on that, but from what I understand, he at least can design plays, and we know that the Harbaughs can't. I really like this, him going to the Giants, pairing him up with Jackson Dart and on the opposite side of Malik Neighbors. And of course, you got the bowling ball running back Cam Scatterboo. What do you think? Like, is Carnell Tate just like that missing piece for this Giants offense? Because with the hiring of John Harbaugh, and if they have a strong offseason, which I mean, I think they have quite a bit of salary cap to go play with too.
Hmm.
And if they go have a strong offseason with the free agent and the draft, we're talking that this could be a worst to first situation, and they could easily turn it around, kind of similar to how the Patriots did last season.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there with the pick with Carnell Tate. I mean, he'd be the perfect numbers 2 receiver opposed to Malik Neighbors. And who knows if he, misses a couple weeks in the start of the season. Hopefully not. But give Jackson Dart all the help he can possibly get. I feel like the only not the only other, but the other likely situation is them for maybe to go offensive line here at number 5. But I have Maui Noah already off the board, the best offensive lineman. And yeah, Spencer Fano could make some sense for the Giants even, but I think their offensive line wasn't too putrid last year. It was pretty decent. We got some good offensive line play, and it's starting to come together a little bit for the Giants in that sense. So you get John Harbaugh, new coach in here. Uh, you know, they might want to go safety even if Caleb Downs is still at the board at that point. I will throw that out there as well. We saw him pick Kyle
Ooh.
Hamilton a few years back. In his time in Baltimore, but the Giants are going to have to add some firepower, even more firepower than they've already been doing to, keep this train rolling. And especially for next season, not a lot of people are talking about this because it's so early, but they have crazy, crazy away games next year. They have to play the NFC West next year. So that's the
Oh,
Seahawks, the 49ers, yeah,
the
the Cardinals,
Rams.
and then the Rams. And 3 of those games are away. So give your
Oh.
offense some firepower, score more points next year, and try to see if the Giants fans can't be disappointed for another year.
A name that just kind of popped into my head. We were talking about free agency just right there, and earlier in the show we were talking about Mike Evans, and the Giants kind of
Mm.
like slip through the cracks. So if they go and get like a veteran wide receiver in free agency, that basically opens it up, and they're going to either go offensive line or they're going to go best defensive player. I feel like, because looking at it here, their team needs are wide receiver, offensive line, corner, linebacker, defensive line. So they really, I mean, they could really go hit like maybe like on one of the corners or one of the linebackers, maybe in a situation Arvell Reese is still there, and or maybe they go and get a stud corner, or maybe Caleb Downs there, and then they don't have to worry about the secondary as much. So, like, guys, this is why it's the pre-combine mock draft, is because there's still a lot to go. I mean, we're still 2 months away from the NFL draft. So that's like essentially 8-9 weeks away from the NFL draft. So this is just a pre-combine. I'm going to have a whole different combine next week. After people do good or do terrible at the combine, some people are going to rise and some people are going to fall, unfortunately. But for right now, Carnell Tate makes the most sense. And all right, you are up with the Browns.
So as I just mentioned not too long ago, I feel like Spencer Fano would be a little bit too low of a pick in the top 5, but like we were talking about earlier, the Browns' offensive line last year was just putrid. And the fact that they have 2 first round picks is huge because they have 2 opportunities to hit on their draft picks. And with this idea here, I have them going with the offensive lineman first and then grabbing a receiver later. As you see at pick number 24, I have them drafting Casey Concepcion right before the Bills can at that point, which would be funny to me, of course. But I think strengthening this offensive line, it would be, the best thing they could do. And, like I said, the first offensive lineman is already off the board. So you go ahead and you grab arguably the second best offensive lineman there. And Spencer Fano is a guy who, he's very versatile. He's very quick with his feet, which is a good thing. But some of the knocks on him that a lot of people have been saying is maybe, he's undersized. But that's why he's able to be so quick. So,
That is
maybe,
true.
yeah. So, it's going to be interesting to see what team kind of, disregards that, because, in the reality is he's not, he wouldn't be the biggest tackle ever. So maybe they move him to guard. We're going to see a lot of that, I think, too, in this draft. A lot of offensive linemen going from tackle to guard, just based
Mhm.
on what the team sees best fit. So did you see it any way different for the Cleveland Browns at number 6?
Yeah, I did. Okay, so the most Cleveland Brown thing to do, right, would be to take Ty Simpson because they need a quarterback. Earlier in the show, you heard us talking about they're in the market for a quarterback. So that would be the absolute most Cleveland Brown thing to do. Don't worry, Browns fans. I didn't do that to you in this mock draft. I did, however, feel that they are reaching on a player, and they're going to go with a wide receiver,
Ooh,
Makai Lemon. They are
I love
going
that
to
pick.
reach on him, and Carnell Tate's off the board. Yeah, Jordan Tyson's still there, but I think they go and they get an explosive playmaker for whoever the quarterback is going to be. Because whoever the quarterback is going to be, first and foremost, they are going to need some playmakers on offense. They're going to need a wide receiver. They're going, they had their tight end in Harold Fannin from last year. They do have good running backs. They need to go get like a real true alpha male wide receiver one. I think Makai Lemon could step in, be that for the Shadur Sanders, just Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, maybe. Who knows? Whoever the quarterback will be come September, I think Makai Lemon is that player that can come in and just be the alpha dog, the alpha male, and get the Cleveland Browns offense. Cleveland fans will finally have something to be excited about on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, I mean, they got Myles Garrett and they got Carson Schwarzenegger, who won Rookie of the Year, and of course Myles Garrett won Defensive Player of the Year. So on defense, they got all the people that they need. They just need to get this offense moving and scoring more points. And with the hiring of, is it Todd Monken that became the new
Yep.
head coach? He's offensive minded. I think he's going to want to go get a wide receiver and see what he can dial up on the offensive side.
I love it. I love that pick. Yeah. Makai Lemon is going to be a treat for any team that drafts him because, as we just mentioned with Cardinal Tate, he's kind of that, outside the numbers, chuck it up, and, he'll hopefully come down with those one-on-one balls. But Makai Lemon, he can take punt returns, he can take kick returns. They're, sort of comparing him to a JSN type of play. So
Ooh.
that right there, yeah. I mean, your reaction right there. You say, "Ooh, teams are gonna
Ooh.
love, the capabilities of Makai Lemon and what he could bring to their team." And I loved watching his tape at USC. It's truly impressive. So that's another real possibility for the Browns there at number 6. I just kind of flip flopped it in my mock draft. But for number 7 now, we have the Washington Commanders, whose defense was brutal last year. Do you have them taking a defensive player here?
Actually, I do. I do. So Washington needs a lot. Okay. When I'm looking at it, I see edge rusher, corner, linebacker, tight end, and wide receiver. It's way too early for a tight end. And I don't see this being like I've got to go get a wide receiver. There is plenty of wide receiver depth. I mean, so you don't have
Mhm.
to go get in the first round. So I think the Commanders might swing back on tight end and wide receiver in round 2 and 3. But for number 7, so I'm looking at this defensive side here: edge rusher, corner, and linebacker. Well, looking at the draft, I had Arvell Reese off the board. I have David Bailey off the board. So there's a linebacker and an edge rusher right there off the board. I'm going linebacker Sony Styles from
Ooh.
Ohio State. I think he can kind of come in, learn from Bobby Wagner, who I just saw is coming back for like a 20th season. So he can kind of be that, learn from him and learn the NFL game right next to Bobby Wagner. And I think Sony Styles can be that anchor for the Commanders going into the new era. They might be getting new jerseys that, maybe they're getting a new stadium in the future. So I think on the defensive side, Sony Styles can be that playmaker on defense, and he can be, like, you don't have to worry about. He's actually a really good coverage linebacker. I feel like that is one of his underrated traits. Is he can be out there in coverage, and so when you have a linebacker like that can not only blitz the quarterback, but he can drop back in coverage and be a solid run stopper, then I think you just have to go and take that, because this draft is full of talent, but you don't want to be sitting there sleeping and maybe a division rival steals. Because honestly, I was doing like a practice mock draft before I actually kind of did my realistic first mock draft, and I had the Cowboys taking Sony Styles at 12, at 12. And so for me, I went with linebacker, prevent the Cowboys from drafting him, because sometimes, hey, winning the division means you're blocking your division rival from drafting a great player. So linebacker Sony Styles to the Commander at 7.
Yeah, Sony Styles, honestly, he could be a top 5, edge rusher in this class. And, a lot of people I feel like are overlooking him a little bit because of Arvell Reese. But Sony Styles was honestly, he was as good of edge rusher as Arvell Reese. And I have him going a little bit later to the Cowboys. That would be the perfect fit for him, in my opinion. But in my case, or actually in my case, David Bailey would still be on the board. So I would be going with David Bailey in that sense. But also on your side of the board too, do they look at a Caleb Downs there at number 7? Their defense was horrible last year. So that could be a situation they want to put themselves in as well. But I agree. I feel like, with both top receivers off the board potentially, this wide receiver class is filled with great prospects and honestly steals in the later rounds. So it's a lock for me for Washington to go defense there at number 7. I think you're muted.
So you took David Bailey. Great pick there. Apparently my mic was muted and I did not know it. But so number 8, this is where things kind of get real interesting for me, guys, because next up is the Saints. And I can't wait to see who you put at number 8.
It's gonna be a shocker to most, but I got finally Jeremiah Love coming off of the board. And after Alvin Kamara is sort of aging, the Saints are gonna need to give Tyler Shell some much needed relaxing. It was his rookie year last year, and he honestly overperformed what a lot of people thought he was gonna put out there in the football field. And kudos to Tyler Shell and the culture that they're already starting to build in New Orleans with Kellen Moore there, and Kellen Moore coming into his second year. I think the Saints defense was honestly pretty more than decent last year. They surprised a lot of people with their defensive unit that they put out there, and at this point, I think, maybe the caveat or the other side of things is, oh, we'll get you a Cam Jordan replacement or something along those lines. But with the aging Alvin Kamara, I mean, I feel like Jeremiah Love could potentially be a fit here for the Saints. And honestly, I will be honest, this is also just so the Chiefs can't get him at number 9. But who did you have the Saints picking?
So I did go offensive side, but I went a little bit different route here. Alvin Kamara is getting old, but here's the thing: is running backs. I understand the talent of Jeremiah Love. You can see the flag behind me. I'm a Notre Dame representative through and through. I'm a big fan of Jeremiah Love. But with that said, historically speaking, running backs, you can go get running back talent in the second, third, fourth round, especially in this class. There is a lot of good running backs. So another glaring need on the offensive side to pair with Tyler Shuck is Jordan Tyson, wide receiver from Arizona State. Big body, 6'2", 200+ pound, big frame. He's kind of a smaller build, but he's tall. And I just think that he can be, we don't know the Chris Olave situation. Like, is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? But Tyler Shuck, Kellen Moore's offense, I think you go get another great wide receiver and you pair up a running back in the second round, or maybe you go defense because their defense is kind of weak too. So, looking at their team needs is edge rusher, wide receiver, corner, offensive line, and defensive line. So for me, I took the Saints at the Saints take Jordan Tyson. Sorry. They take Jordan Tyson.
I like that pick too, as you mentioned. I mean, give Chris Olave some help. He seems to be getting thrown hospital balls every time. So, give another receiver for Tyler Shuck to throw to, and keep this culture building in NOLA. For the next pick, we have the Chiefs at number 9. And it's going to be interesting to see who trots out there, week 1. I mean, it's pretty much consensus that Gardner Minshew is going to be starting the season with the gruesome injury, unfortunately, that Patrick Mahomes suffered last year. But in number 9 of the draft, I have them going, and he finally comes off the board for me. Reuben Bain Jr. out of Miami. And he can arguably be the best pass rusher in this draft class too, as well, for the people who have him over David Bailey. Reuben Bain was not one of the sole reasons, but he was a huge part of that Miami defense last year. And, obviously they didn't make it to obviously they didn't win the national championship, but that defense was just filled with studs, even with, Akeem Messidor. He was a big help to that defense too. But Reuben Bain at number 9 makes a lot of sense for me. It could be the Chris Jones replacement. And they could, obviously go offense, like how you were saying before, maybe during free agency, maybe they'll look at a Mike Evans, but I think their wide receiver room's a little crowded for that after they drafted, Jalen Royals last year. They had Rasheed Rice, but does Hollywood Brown come back? Do other pieces, still fill that wide receiver room? So, I mean, the way your board is set up right now, pretty much the top 3 are gone already. So that wouldn't be an option for them. So I got them going with Reuben Bain Jr. at number 9.
So I have them taking defense, and on my board, Jeremiah Love is still sitting there. And, I promise I did not pick Jeremiah Love to the Chiefs. I just think that maybe Travis Etienne is a free agent, unless he gets tagged. But if he hits the open market, he has real strong interest with the Chiefs. So maybe he signs with them. And so for this, I was trying to kind of think of, free agency happens before the draft, and the Chiefs might go add a veteran running back instead of drafting one. And so for this mock draft, I do have him on the defensive side of the ball, and this guy, like, I don't know, but I have him taking Peter Woods, defensive lineman from Clemson. You were talking about the replacement of Chris Jones. Well, this guy can go in, play right next to him, learn that defense, and kind of be, if Chris Jones eventually makes his way out of Kansas City, he can step in and be that 4-3-3-4 defensive tackle that you need. And I really like Peter Woods from Clemson. He's big and he can clog up that lane. And I think he is actually slightly quick enough that if you needed to move into the outside, you could, and it wouldn't affect you too much. I wouldn't recommend doing it on a strong basis, like a regular basis. But I have Peter Woods from Clemson, and maybe some are saying that that's a little high. But I did, like I said, I kind of just went off of team needs. And, tight end, no. Running back, like I said, they take, Travis Etienne maybe in free agency. Wide receiver, the top three are off. And Andy Reid and their GM is not known for reaching on offensive players. So I think they just go to the defense. And then when you look at the defense, they need corner and offensive line. But I think you just got to get some more pass rushers and stuff like that. So I like Peter Woods here at number 9.
Yeah, I don't mind Peter Woods at that spot at all, to be honest, because I mean, before this college football season kind of got more deeper into the season, people were mocking Peter Woods like top 3, top 4. So this is a
Right.
guy who just didn't have that much of a production of a year last year, but teams are going to take a chance on Peter Woods, and there may be off the field issues that some people are talking about as well, but that didn't stop teams like the Atlanta Falcons last year when they traded up for James Pierce Jr. And I mean, we all saw what happened with that, I guess, but fortunately he is freed. So, but yeah, Peter Woods, we both got the same idea here. Get a replacement for Chris Jones, who's getting up there in age, and still have a cornerstone, piece on the defensive side of the ball.
Well, number 10 is the Cincinnati Bengals.
The Bungles.
The Bengals. And looking at this, they need edge rusher, which, they kind of already missed out on a few. There's still one there, but they need offensive line, corner, defensive line, and safety. I gotta say, there's a certain individual who's still sitting there on my board, and it's Caleb Downs, safety from Ohio State. He could arguably be a top 5 pick. I think he slides down just a bit, but Caleb Downs is going to kind of be that anchor on the back end of that secondary. And we all know how bad the Bengals defense was this past season. I mean, they were bad. And I think Caleb Downs comes in, takes the pressure off of those pass rushers. They might be losing Trey Hendrickson, so they could easily go with another pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
But, Reuben Bain is still sitting there, sure. But I just, in this situation, I just don't think that the Bengals go that route. I think they want to try to solidify their secondary, and then they can go get like a pass rusher in maybe round 2, 3, 4 and stuff like that. Because there still will be a few good pass rushers there. So, but for me, Caleb Downs was sitting there, and I was like, there's no way that he makes it out of the top 10. So that's where I had the Bengals. He fell to the Bengals at 10. So
yeah, that would certainly be his floor for me as well, being a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. And we kind of have the same idea here. Just, in my situation, Caleb Downs was just not on my board still, with him going as early as 2 for me in this mock draft. But I have the same, kind of idea here with the Bengals going with Mansour Delane out of LSU. He's arguably the best corner prospect in this draft. And like you said, the Bengals defense is always just putrid year in and year out. So get you some secondary help. I mean, I've just the Bengals have just produced so many, bad corners, and they just had bad corner play for so long. I mean, we remember the days of Eli Apple. I mean, those are hilarious, honestly, to watch. But yeah, Bengals, they need defensive help. I don't think it's, it might be likely for them to take an edge rusher, because, like you said, because of, if they lose Trey Hendrickson. But I think since they took Shamar Stewart last year in the first round, who I believe they kind of reached on a little too much.
oh yeah.
But yeah. Defense is going to be the theme here for the Bengals around one, and they wish they could take an offensive lineman here to protect Joe Burrow, but that's just not the case.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, you know, they can't have everything that they want. And
Mhm.
so guys, I am going to continue on, but I think our guest here, he has a very busy life. He blessed us with an hour and 5 minutes of his time. So you need to head out. Am I correct?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Loved being
Yeah.
on the Answer the Call show. It was long overdue. Expect many more collabs, guys, between
Yes.
us.
Real quick though, we're gonna put the spotlight on you, and you tell the wonderful audience where to find you and your show before you head out.
So if you guys want to find my show, and I have wonderful co-hosts from all over the country, Dallas, Seattle, Louisiana. We cover, everything NFL, every sport. We got some HBCU stuff going on, of course, with my guys Michael and Deuce. Also, shout out to Deuce, which is his birthday today. Michael's was yesterday, so hope you guys are continuing to have, a good week here. And yeah, at NFL Playmakers, that's with a Z on Instagram, and our YouTube channel is called Inside the Locker Room TV. So yeah, Tim, thank you for having me again, and I'll catch you
Hey
guys soon.
man, Ben, thank you for your time. Definitely gonna have to do this again. Have a great day. Tell the boys I said happy birthday.
Will do, brother. You guys keep on mocking right here. Some good stuff. I'll catch you
All right,
guys.
man. We'll see you next time, bud. All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and continue this just because I mean we're at 10, and I know it's over an hour, and normally I don't do this, but I really want to get through this first mock draft that you guys kind of have a feel for. So it won't be as long now because it's just me talking, and that's fine. I might try to run through this as quickly as I can. So picking up, we have the Dolphins at number 11. I think they're going to go corner Mansour Delane from LSU. I think corner is a big need for them. They need a lot. I'm not going to lie. They need a quarterback, especially if they trade away Tua. They need offensive line help, but I'm not as sold on Spencer Fanu right now. I mean, I'm going to go back and watch some more tape. I'm going to go and probably the rest of this week spend watching top 50, top 60 players. So I get a better feel for the real in depth as I do my upcoming mocks. They need corner, safety, wide receiver. They miss out on Caleb Downs because the Bengals took him pick ahead. Wide receiver, there's just not enough talent to warrant a top 15 pick at this point. So they went corner, and I think, he can step in and he can kind of be that shutdown corner on that one side. So, this is what the Dolphins need. And I think he's going to come in and have really good success there. So I like the pick in Mansour Delane going to the Dolphins at number 11. All right, Cowboy fans, here we go. This is where it gets interesting, guys, because Cowboys are sitting there at 12, and they're still an elite pass rusher that is still on my board, and I have him falling to the Cowboys at 12. Miami edge rusher Ruben Bain Jr. goes to the Cowboys. Shout out to Matty D. Let me know how you feel about this, boy. Cowboy fans, seriously though, I think this is like the ultimate gift to you guys. If Ruben Bain falls to your lap at 12, you, without a shadow of a doubt, run to that podium with the pick in your hand already. So Ruben Bain, he kind of has some shorter arms, and that's kind of the issue, and that's why he slides down. Will Campbell had arm issues, and look what happened in the Super Bowl. He was getting beat on that defensive front, but shout out to the Seattle defense. They played really good. So Cowboys, Ruben Bain Jr., you go get an elite pass rusher to replace Micah Parsons. And, this is a good pick for them. And that's one of two picks for the Cowboys in the first round. So next up, we have the Los Angeles Rams via the Falcons, and they're going to take cornerback Jermod McCoy. The Dolphins kind of took the first corner off the board. The Rams really need a corner. I think that is like their biggest glaring need at this point is they do need offensive line, but corner, safety, there's not enough safeties. Wide receiver, quarterback, it's too early for them to take a quarterback, especially with Matt Stafford coming back. So it was kind of a no-brainer. Jermod McCoy comes in. He can be that, he can be that defensive playmaker, and he can really lock down wide receivers on that edge. He played at Tennessee, so he's used to going against those, SEC wide receivers. So I really like this pick here in Jermod McCoy going to the Rams at number 13. Next up, we have the Ravens. Ravens new head coach Jesse Minter, defensive minded. He's going to want to build a strong defense because the Ravens defense was a little lackluster last season, and he gets a big guy in Caleb Banks out of Florida, defensive lineman, to kind of clog up that lane. So look for Caleb Banks. This would be a great fit. And, he's big, strong. He's going to command double teams. And I really like Ravens taking Caleb Banks here, guys. So let me know, Ravens fans. At number 15, Bucks take edge rusher Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. With Ruben Bain gone and David Bailey gone, and Bucks need an edge rusher. They are needing an edge rusher. That is actually their biggest need. Linebacker, corner, tight end, offensive line. Tight end, I'm just not sold yet. Offensive line, sure, they could have probably taken Spencer Fanu here. But in this mock draft, I have them taking Howell from Texas A&M. So Jets are on the clock again via Indianapolis, and I wish Ben was still here to hear this. So I'll definitely have to tell him to go back and listen. I have the Jets staying on the defensive side of the ball, and they're going to take cornerback Avian Terrell from Clemson. They got that pick from Indy, when they sent Sauce Gardner over there. Now they need a corner to replace him, and this is going to be kind of that player. He's not a Sauce Gardner by any means, but he is going to come in and fill that hole on the Jets in the Jets secondary. So they took linebacker with the first pick, and then now they're going to go and get another playmaker on defense in Avian Terrell from Clemson. All right, guys. Lions are on the board, and, well, what they need is edge rusher. Well, there's not really a whole lot of edge rushers left that could go here. They need defensive line. There might be a few that could go here, but I see offensive line, corner, and safety. So Spencer Fanu finally comes off the board here to the Detroit Lions at number 17. He slides just a bit, due to his lack of size. But Lions get a great tackle, help protect Jared Goff, help open up the run lanes for Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery. So this is a great pick for the Lions. And Dan Campbell likes to, be really aggressive and smash mouth. This Spencer Fanu can come in and he could probably play guard too if need be. So I really like Spencer Fanu going to the Lions at 17. Now, next up we have the Vikings. And a lot of you are going to say there's no way that this happens. So at number 18, the Vikings need a safety, corner, offensive line, wide receiver, linebacker. But they take running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. They go get an elite runner who can take the pressure off J.J. McCarthy if that's the route that they go. Help, and they got Justin Jefferson and they got Jordan Addison and they got a good tight end who can stretch the field vertically. So then you go and plug in a player like Jeremiah Love, and that offense is going to be really good this season. And it takes a lot of pressure off McCarthy, kind of in the sense that, with a strong run game and a strong defense, you know, he can kind of go back to what he had at Michigan. So, and that's more his play style. Okay, the Cowboys are up via Green Bay. Now, they already replaced Micah Parsons at edge rusher, but, you know, they missed out on Sony Styles, but there's a linebacker out of Georgia that I think makes a lot of sense here, and that's C.J. Allen. He is a very, very good linebacker. Definitely, he's going to come in and have immediate impact on that defense. Pair him up with Reuben Bain, and all of a sudden, Dallas's defense is that much better. And, you know, earlier in the show, we talked about they brought back Javonte Williams. They're going to franchise tag George Pickens. So I really like the Cowboys to go and stick on the defensive side of the ball and try to become physical on the defensive side of the ball. And CJ Allen is that type of linebacker that you want on your team. So Cowboy fans, how are we feeling about CJ Allen at number 20? All right, number 21, the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers is more than likely coming back. So if he wasn't, then I could definitely see them wanting to take a quarterback here. But for the sake of this mock draft, he's coming back. He needs playmakers, guys. And wide receiver Denzel Boston. If you remember talking on the show last week, Pigskin Frenzy, Joel at the Pigskin Frenzy and myself were really high on this guy pre-combine. And Denzel Boston is a big body wide receiver, and he can kind of come in and be that big target for Aaron Rodgers and kind of, you know, help take that pressure off the run game. And I like Denzel Boston out of Washington going to the Steelers. You know, he played in Washington, so he's already used to cold weather. To me, it makes perfect sense. Next up is the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers, my team. No brainer here. Okay. Offensive line needs to be the pick. I don't care if they go and sign Tyler Lindenbaum in free agency or not. They need to go get this guard out of Penn State. Vega Ione, which I'm not going to try to pronounce all of his name right now because I'll butcher it and I don't want to do that. But Vega Ione out of Penn State guard. Guard is a big need. Mekhi Becton's probably not coming back. Bradley Bozeman retired. So offensive line definitely needs to be the play here. And what better way than going and getting what I think is the best guard in this draft. So I hope that the Chargers, you know, hear this and that's the pick that they make. Well, this next pick just makes way too much sense, guys. It's the Eagles, and they're on the clock. And what does the Eagles need? Well, they need edge rusher. Well, sorry. Missed out. They need corner. Well, the top two corners kind of already came off the board. So they need tight end. They need a tight end. And there happens to be a tight end worthy of this pick here, guys. From Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq. Okay. Out of Oregon is the first tight end off the board going to the Eagles to kind of replace, you know, Dallas Goedert. And what better way? I mean, we talked about him a little bit on the last episode as well. You know, he has athleticism, you know, 4.5 speed probably. And we're talking that now all of a sudden, you know, you just kind of plug him in and, you know, AJ Brown may or may not be there. So definitely going to need some playmakers on offense. What better way than getting a tight end that can still play wide receiver? So Eagles get a great addition to their offense right here in round one. Browns at 24 via Jacksonville. They need offensive line help. Well, they needed a wide receiver earlier. You know, they took Mekhi Lemon in this mock. I have them taking Caden Proctor tackle. So I think Caden Proctor can come in and be that anchor on one side of the line for them and give the quarterback, whoever it might be, the much needed protection. And you know, Todd Monken's going to want to run the ball, going to want to pass the ball. He's looking to build that offense up. And I think, you know, you got to have some protection. So, all right. Next up is the Chicago Bears. And this is another one of those picks for me that just kind of makes sense. Bears take defensive lineman Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. I watched this guy at the Senior Bowl, and this guy is a beast. So Bears fans, I mean, I feel like offensively under Ben Johnson, you kind of have the offense. You have Caleb Williams, you have DeAndre Swift, you have Kyle Managa at running back, you have Rome Odunze at wide receiver, you have Cole Kmet and their rookie tight end. And so I think you just need to solidify your defense, and more specifically, you need that defensive line help. And Lee Hunter is that guy. He is that guy to come in, plug up the run lane. He can get to the passer, he can get to the quarterback. He's not elite at it, but he can definitely put pressure on quarterbacks. More importantly, though, he can command a double team that frees up an edge rusher, that frees up a linebacker. So I don't know. This is one of those it feels right picks for me. So I have the Bears taking Lee Hunter. At number 26, Bills need offensive help for Josh Allen. But Joe Brady, new head coach Joe Brady, offensive minded, wants to prove the critics wrong that he is a head coach, not an offensive coach. He's going edge rusher Keldrick Bolt from Auburn. And this guy, I mean, he's versatile. He can play inside, outside. I mean, so if you need a 3-4, a 4-3, he can play both inside and out. Real good pick here. And who knows, this is one of those guys that he could climb up draft boards real quick, especially if he has a strong combine. So I really like Keldrick Falk here, guys, at number 26. All right, we're in the back half, the back six here of this mock draft, and we have the 49ers taking edge rusher TJ Parker from Clemson. Back-to-back edge rushers. Now the edge rushers, the teams that need edge rushers, they're kind of panicking a bit because all of a sudden, we got to get an edge rusher. 49ers get a great one, TJ Parker. Go and listen to the last episode, when the NFL Combine players talking about whose stock could skyrocket after a good combine. TJ Parker is one of those guys that he's going to have a great combine, and he's going to fly up draft boards, and he could easily be a top 15 pick if he has a great combine. So 49ers luck out in this mock draft and get a great edge rusher. Who knows what's going to happen with Nick Bosa? He's not on the field. He's getting up there in age. So TJ Parker makes sense to me. Texans take defensive lineman Christian Miller from Georgia. They need a lot of help. They need offensive line help. They need, a lot of help. But for me, this is the safe pick here on the defensive side. Christian Miller going to the Texans at 28. All right, now we have the final four, the Rams. The Rams could go quarterback here. Just, I know Matt Stafford's coming back, but what better way to have the quarterback of the future than draft him in the first round with that fifth-year option? So I don't have him going that route in this mock draft. I have him taking tackle Caleb Lemieux from, I want to say he's a Utah guy, but I'm not 100% on that one. But Rams need an offensive lineman, especially with Rob Havenstein retiring. They're going to need somebody to come in and fill that void, and this guy can come in and do that. So Rams, go get some protection for Mr. Matt Stafford in what might be his final season. Who knows? All right, Broncos. So Broncos team needs are linebacker, tight end, defensive line, offensive line, running back. I went a different route here, guys. I went with a different route. I think they take a wide receiver, and I think that's going to be Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. They need help for Bo Nix in the worst way. If Kenyon Sadiq was still here, I might put him there. I don't think Eli Stowers is quite round one worthy yet, but if he, maybe he has a strong combine and maybe he goes in. For now, I have Casey Concepcion going to the Broncos at 30. All right. The Super Bowl teams. Patriots are going to take tackle Monroe Freeling. And honestly, this kind of feels like a massive steal because he is the type of guy that I feel like, he can play multiple positions. He could easily climb up those draft boards. And I expect him to, especially as more and more tackles start coming off the board and those teams that really need offensive line help. Don't be surprised if he's a top 20 pick, guys. But for this mock draft, the Patriots have Monroe Freeling to kind of, he can go play the opposite side of Will Campbell. Will Campbell needed a lot of help from the offensive line, not named Will Campbell. I know Will Campbell gave up a lot, but how much of that was because the other guys weren't holding up their ends either? So I like this pick here for the Patriots. They get to go be smash mouth in the trenches. And that leads us to the Super Bowl champs. The Seattle Seahawks take corner Brandon Sis from South Carolina. They need corner. They need help in that secondary. So I really like this pick, guys. I don't know. He may not be there come pick 32, but in this mock, that's where I have him. So, and I know I ran through, 11 through 32 rather quickly, but I don't normally go over an hour, and I still wanted everybody to, enjoy the episode. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to really study these guys this week, especially at the combine. And that's probably what's going to be the focus. I'm going to talk about the combine, and I'm going to do another mock draft next week. So tune in to make sure to see how it changes, because I'm sure it's going to change a lot from now till next week. So, guys, you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, wherever, however you may be watching, however you may be listening. Thank you for making this show part of your day. Thank you for making it great. If you want to talk ball, I'll answer the call. You guys have a good night, and I'll see you next time.